You're tuned in to Oilers Nation every day with Tyler Yaremchuk, live every weekday on the Nation Network YouTube.
It took almost, 4.5 months of the season, but we finally have a big trade to talk about. So let's get into it with the lead. Let's go. Live from the Sports Closet studio. It's Oilers Nation every day. Check them out, sportscloset.ca. I see CD Locals in the chat saying, I want to get a jersey. Every time I see the Sports Closet logo, I got to stop being so lazy and head down there. And how about this jacket as well? Like this vintagey reverse retro thing. Tons of reverse retro gear available at sportscloset.ca. 3 locations in the Edmonton area as well. Check them out on their website. We are live on the Nation Network YouTube as well as the Oilers Nation Twitter and Facebook. And Sergeant Battle is in with the first comment. Is it safe to say blockbuster yet? I need Frank's approval. And you know what? I think it is safe to say blockbuster. Yesterday, about mid-afternoon, the Canucks and Islanders hook up for a big trade. Liam was the first one in our office to notice the tweet, and he said, whoa, the Canucks just traded Horvat. And then I said, I think that's probably a fake account, Liam. It was not. This is a big deal. I honestly don't get it from either side, Liam. For me, if you're the Vancouver Canucks, why did you want to get more expensive on the wing? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Anthony Beauvillier is fine, but he's, to put it in Oilers terms, like a more expensive Kyler Yamamoto. Aatu Raty is also fine. Think of him as a lesser version of Dylan Holloway. The 2023 first-round pick being top 12 protected this year, I don't really see how that helps the Vancouver Canucks, but the interesting part is that if the pick is protected this year, it's fully unprotected next season, so maybe that's why they were willing to do that. From a Canucks perspective, I just feel like they didn't really get enough to justify jumping the market and moving on from Bo Horvat this early. From an Islanders perspective, Lou Lamoriello, you are not in the playoffs. So maybe going and spending 3 assets on a rental centerman isn't the best idea in the world. And listen, it's not like the Islanders are 1 point out of the playoffs. You know, they're 2 points back of the Penguins, 3 points back of the Capitals, but they've played 52 games. That's tied for the most in the conference. It's not like there's any sort of games in hand thing that they have a chance to make up ground in a hurry. It's the exact opposite of that. They have to jump Buffalo and Pittsburgh, or just Washington and Buffalo, whatever. They need to jump 2 of those teams in the East without significant games in hand. I don't understand this deal from either side. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not used to being in this position, Tyler. I don't know what to look and what to do with my hands and everything. But for the hockey trade stuff, I think that it was weird that it happened when it did. Like, I don't know why they wanted to move on so quickly from one of the prize assets of this trade deadline. Like, I feel like something else could have been bigger from this. I guess what this does do, though, from an Islanders perspective is if they kind of fall out of the race, they can still move Bo Horvat, right? If they truly wanted to. But that is an option for them. Is that the play? I don't know. But I don't know. I could also see like Beauvillier maybe getting moved on as well from Vancouver. So maybe that's another piece of this is like Vancouver just wants to get this deal done so then they can get more assets for Beauvillier maybe in a couple of weeks or so whenever the deadline is. But the first round pick, top 12 protected seems large considering where the Islanders are. But if that goes unprotected, like you said, like it's unprotected for the year after. But if that was like top 5, you would kind of get it. But I don't know. If to me, it's just a very interesting trade. I feel like Vancouver could have waited this out overall and probably got a little bit more. I don't hate it, but I don't love it, I guess is a good way to put it.
Actually, Aaron, can we flash back up the Bo Horvat career stats here? Look at this. This is a guy who is having the definition of a contract career year. Last year of the deal, and he explodes with numbers that he's basically really never put up before. He's already matched a career total in goals, even though it's only been 49 games played. He's getting close to his career high in points with, again, still 33 games to go in the season, or I guess now that he's going to Long Island, it's 30 games to go in the season. I don't view him as a guy who's going to be worth $8.5 to $9 million. If the Islanders are going to re-sign him and convince him to not go to market, it is probably going to take somewhere from $8 to $9 million. Yeah, he's young-ish. You know, he's still got probably some good hockey left in front of him. But this isn't a guy who you can count on for 45 goals a season. And I think or even 40. This might not be a guy you can count on for 35 goals a season moving forward. I get he does a lot of other stuff. He's a leader. He brings those intangibles. He's an all situations player. That's great. The Vancouver Canucks over the offseason offered him the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins deal. Okay? Now he's earned $3+ million more because of a good 4 months. There's two ways this plays out for the New York Islanders. Either they give Bo Horvat what he wants on an extension and they keep him long term, and that's pretty much, they have to do that if they want this deal to be a win, but then you're overpaying Bo Horvat. You're tying up way more money, which you don't even have. I'm looking at their contracts that are coming off the books next year. Like, the Islanders are already in cap hell. They have they've projected for $16.2 million against the cap next season. You're going to burn 8.5 of that on Bo Horvat, and you need a backup goalie at that point. You're going to potentially have to re-sign Scott Mayfield, but I guess you're letting him walk at that point. And guess what? You do all that, and your roster is still old as hell. Your roster can't score that well because, again, Bo Horvat is fine, but this is a career year, and they're going to sign Bo Horvat based off the career year. I think for the Islanders, it's not a good move. The other way is, what, they let Bo Horvat walk at the end of the season? Even if you make the playoffs, you're not going on a run if you're the New York Islanders. So you, gave up all this stuff to get 1 or 2 rounds of the playoffs? I don't know. It doesn't make sense for me I don't think it makes sense from either side here. And the Canucks GM comes out and goes, we feel like we got 3 first-round picks. No, you didn't. Aatu Raty is a second-rounder who's played 12 NHL games. Anthony Beauvillier is 25 years old. That guy's not getting you a first-rounder even if you flip him. I don't know. Egan says, do they sign and trade Horvat? That wouldn't even make sense. You wouldn't even get the value from that either. So I don't know why Lou Lamoriello felt the need to jump the gun here with this deal. I mean, I guess he's going all in, but that pick being unprotected next year, I think could end up hurting them the way Florida's pick could end up hurting them this year, where they left it unprotected and traded it to Montreal.
Yeah, it's weird how GMs can't read the situation of their team. Like, it's fairly obvious that the Islanders, even with a Bo Horvat, is still a couple of pieces away from contending for the Stanley Cup. And like you said, they're not even in a playoff spot right now. They're in a very difficult division. I know it's only 2 points, but like you said, they've already played the most games in the NHL. Like, it just doesn't seem that logical to go out and do it. Again, maybe they trade Horvat, but even if they sign him, like, to go the other way and sign him, like, they can't afford half the players on the roster anyway. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense from that angle now that we talk about it a little bit more here. But there's the standings. Like, yeah, 2 points out of a playoff spot, and there's Pittsburgh, New York, the Devils, and Carolina all ahead of them.
Yeah. You guys got some interesting comments in the Nation Network YouTube chat. Hit the like button there as well. Tyler Mulick is big sad that we can't get a combo Bo Horvat, Luke Schenn trade. Yeah, sure. I feel that. I know you wanted it bad. Dr. Gonzo, here's a take. The Islanders end up too far back to be in the playoffs, have to trade Horvat. Kenny Holland does a big brain play and brings him in with even more salary retained. So if the Islanders kept half, they all of a sudden have a Bo Horvat trade asset that's only $2 million. Like, maybe,
Tyler,
but I don't think Lou does that. Lou's stubborn.
What if that hypothetically was available to the Oilers? You could get Bo Horvat at 50%, whatever it is now. I don't know, whatever it works out to be. What would you hypothetically give up for that? I think I would give up quite a lot for that, to be honest.
Yeah, I would probably move Puljujarvi and the first. And I don't know if I would move much else, if I'm honest, because I think, and this ties into my second topic, Liam, what does this say about the trade market right now? So again, kind of putting this thing into Oilers terms. The best free agent or the best rental centerman on the market is Bo Horvat. He goes for a protected first-round pick, a middle-of-the-lineup kind of tweener. He's a middle six forward, is Anthony Beauvillier, who's overpaid. And a B-plus level prospect. So
at best?
I think B-plus is fair. I think there's a lot of scouts who are high on him. He's a centerman. Sure. We'll call him B+. So from the Oilers' perspective, they gave up the equivalent, in my opinion, of a Yamamoto / Puljujarvi, a first, and Reed Schaefer, I think is maybe a
Yeah.
decent way to put it. I mean, Reed Schaefer is the 32nd overall pick. I think calling him B+ is probably fair at this point. So that's the package for the best guy on the market. So what does a guy like Jonathan Toews end up going for? He's not having nearly the season Bo Horvat is. Granted, he comes with the championship pedigree. I think whatever team acquires Toews isn't doing it with any idea of re-signing him, so that hurts his value a little as well. Jonathan Toews also kind of controls his future with where he will and won't waive to go, so that's another thing to consider with this as well. Bo Horvat didn't have that luxury. So does Toews go for, man, a second and a B- level prospect plus a cap dump? Like, I think you could, after seeing Horvat, if we believe Horvat actually sets the market, does Toews go for a second and Puljujarvi? Maybe a little bit more to keep the money, but
Yeah, I mean, you're right though. Like that, what does it say about what all the teams were thinking a couple of months ago, right? Because we were just, I believe we maybe spoke with this with Franco, speculated ourselves. That like teams wanted so much because everybody wanted to buy, because everyone kind of believed, and then the sellers were licking their chops, thinking, "Oh, we can get so much," and now here we are with Bo Horvat going for that value. Like it looks good for the contending teams, and if you're Ken Holland, like you said, like you're probably on the phone with Jonathan Toews, I guess Carl Davidson, trying to find out what it's going to cost to get him. And if it's only a second round pick and someone to make the money work, then why aren't you doing it? I guess the most difficult part would be trying to find that third party to make it so that the money works out well enough for the Oilers to go and get a Jonathan Toews.
yeah, and that'll be the tough part as well. And Tyler Mulick said you need that third team in there to retain. Someone else said if this was Horvat to the Flames, would we be reacting differently? And I mean, my point would be they both have drastically different chances of making the playoffs. Like this is pretty damning. MoneyPuck.com has the Islanders at a 12.1% chance of making the playoffs. They have the Flames at an 82.7% chance of making the playoffs. So that is very, very different. Horvat obviously increases those odds. And if you win 2 or 3 games in a row when Horvat jumps into your lineup, then yeah, maybe you're up at 30-ish, 35%, but that's still not great. And you still need a lot of good stuff to happen. The Flames at least are closer. So if they would have made the deal, I would have been like, I get it. If the Penguins would have made that deal, even if the Panthers would have made that deal, I would have been like, I get it a little bit more. I just look at that Islanders roster and I'm so underwhelmed by what they throw over the boards, considering how expensive that forward group is. Their blue line's fine, but it's not great. They have Ilya Sorokin, who wins them a lot of hockey games. One of the best goalies in the NHL. If they make the playoffs, Sorokin's got a hell of a Hart Trophy case as well. It's still a head scratcher for me. I don't know. I think Lou could have waited 2 weeks to see where his team was at. I understand the value in jumping the gun a little bit here and getting a guy in your lineup as soon as you can, but this just isn't an Islanders team that I think should be going all in. And if you have a GM who is just consistently going all in because, hey, he's getting to the end of his career and he just wants to build a winner, I think you need to fire that guy. Like, I just don't know how you can have him sit in the GM spot. And this isn't like he's an all-timer. He's a Hall of Famer, right? But if right now he's just running this, like, I'm going to trade everything because I keep wanting to build a winner, you're just going to screw the franchise in the long run.
Yeah, and I guess to some Islanders' credit, Bo Horvat doesn't make them worse. That's for sure. Like
No,
they
he
obviously
doesn't.
they got better there, and also the teams that you listed, like you said, like someone said in the chat, I can't remember the name, but like if this was the Flames, it's like, well, the Flames made the playoffs last year. Florida made the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Penguins made the playoffs. The Islanders missed the playoffs with essentially the exact same roster that they came into the season with. Like, weren't they the team that didn't do anything? Like, they just basically re-signed players, right? So it's just like you're running it back of all these guys who couldn't get it done last year. It's just a very odd move. I guess my question, Tyler, is what do you think the next step for Vancouver is now? Do you think they just continue to blow it up with everyone? Like, there's rumors of Demko going now. Obviously, Luke Schen's on the block. Like, Brock Besser, I believe, has a trade request out there. Like, that team is essentially, they don't want to call it a rebuild, but it's 100% a rebuild.
Yeah, it's trending that way. Brock Besser's got 2 more years at $6.6 million. I think unless you're willing to keep money, you're gonna have a really hard time moving on from Brock Besser and getting like really good assets. Like you'll get something for him. But I don't like that contract at all. Like next season, they're going to have Pettersson at 7.3, Besser at 6.6, JT Miller jumps up to 8 mil, Garland at 4.9, Anthony Beauvillier at 4, Kuzmenko jumps up to 5.5. So they're going to have 6 forwards making $5+ million or $4+ million. And I would argue 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are like bad overpays. I think Miller's an overpay. I think Besser's an overpay. I think Beauvillier's an overpay as well. Granted, Pettersson and Kuzmenko are maybe bargains, and that balances it out a little bit. But I think they're going to keep looking to move on from pieces this year. The problem is, like, Luke Schenn is their only pending UFA that'll have any ounce of value. Outside of that, you're dealing with Tyler Myers, who's got an extra year on his contract. You're dealing with potentially Connor Garland, who has 3 more years, and Besser, who has 2. So I don't even know really where the Canucks can go from here. Like, this was your big trade chip, and you traded him a month and 3 days before the deadline. That's surprising to me.
Yeah. Okay. So what day is the trade deadline?
The 3rd or 4th of March.
Okay. So when do you think the Oilers strike? Like when, if you had to give a timeline, do you think it's like, we'll call the trade deadline like 2 or 3 days before. So whatever that is, the early start of March to like just after the All-Star break. When do you think the Oilers make their first move? Whatever it may be, trading away a player, bringing someone in, small, whatever.
I think right around Feb 12, when Yamamoto's eligible to come back, I think we'll see a move that's either Puljujarvi or Fogle getting dealt to clear up some cap space. I think that's the first one that's coming. If we're talking about an addition for the Oilers to make, I don't think you should be holding your breath until about a week before the deadline when things will start to get serious, because I do think they'll want to wait and see kind of how the market plays out here. We obviously have things a little bit more set right now. We know what Bo Horvat went for, and I think every GM that's a buyer is going to be going to the teams with, it's going to be going to Kyle Davidson in Chicago and Armstrong in St. Louis and saying, hey, Bo Horvat's on a 50-goal pace, 60-goal pace potentially. He got an average roster player, a first and a B+ level prospect. You're taking the average roster player. You're not getting the prospect. I don't think those GMs are even going to potentially get a first-round pick. So the market will be fascinating to watch, and we'll see, like, if a few more teams fall out of the race. Like, I think St. Louis is done. I can't see them doing anything but sell. Nashville, I think, will kind of stand pat. But in the West, like, you have St. Louis, Vancouver, San Jose, Arizona, Anaheim, and Chicago. 6 teams that are going to be selling hard. Okay, that means you only have 10 teams that are even considering being buyers. I don't think Seattle's going to be that aggressive. I'm not sure if LA's might not be involved in the centerman market, so that kind of takes them out of competing with Edmonton in any sort of deal. I don't know how hard the Flames can afford to buy with their limited cap space and limited assets they can move out. So I guess they can move on from Shillington, who's in the player, who's on a personal leave. But in the East, you have Columbus, Montreal, Ottawa, Detroit, Philly. 5 teams that are definitely going to be selling to some extent. Right now, there's 11 sellers. We'll see if a few more end up falling back a little bit and make that decision. Like if Nashville has a bad 3 weeks, they're going to be selling. If Florida has a bad 3 weeks, they'll be selling. Lord knows what Lou Lamoriello is going to do. The Buffalo Sabres, if they have a bad 3 weeks, they could end up being sellers. So there's a few more teams that you're kind of waiting on that could still, to some extent, shape the market a little bit. So we'll see. It'll be a fun few weeks on the show, Liam.
I'm curious to see the defensive market. We obviously, Bo Horvat kind of dictates the forward, but like, how does the defensive market kind of figure into this too? Because by the sounds of it, every team out there wants a first-round pick for their defenseman. So we'll see how that one kind of falls as well once that first domino crashes.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. All right, we have something fun to do here, but first I got to give some love to Star Mechanical. Check them out, starmechanical.ca, one of Edmonton's top new home plumbing installers for the past 20 years. If you need 24/7 emergency service, you can give them a ring, 780-481-8873, starmechanical.ca. I put out the call on Twitter earlier today, and I said, hey, send me your best trade ideas. and I want to grade them live. So I didn't even really look at them that much. I just told Aaron to go clip a bunch that are interesting, and we're going to give our thoughts on them live, kind of on the stream here. If you have a trade idea that you want to drop in the YouTube chat as well, feel free to do that. And maybe we'll get to a few of those as well. But Aaron, let's go. What do you got first for us? Throw it up. This one comes in from Drew. Arizona trades Jacob Chychrun and Nick Bjugstad to Edmonton for Warren Foegele, Jesse Puljujarvi, Raphael Lavoie, a 2023 first lottery protected, okay, and a 2023 third. So right off the bat, you got to make sure the money works here. Chychrun is sitting at 4.6. Bjugstad is sitting at 900. So you got 5.4 coming in. You have Puljujarvi and Foegele coming out. That's 5.7. So the money actually works on this deal. The Oilers save a little bit. That'll make life easier for them down the stretch. The talk is that the Coyotes want 3 assets for Jacob Chychrun still. So in this deal, I think Foegele is not much of an asset. He's a cap dump. Puljujarvi is a small asset. Raphael Lavoie, I mean, every organization in the NHL has 2 or 3 Raphael Lavoies. I don't think he has as much value as some Oilers fans like to think. So now you're looking at a 2023 first and a 2023 third. That's not even enough to get you Chychrun. This package you've thrown together here, that just flat out does not get you Jacob Chychrun. Never mind Nick Bjugstad, who I could see him going for a third or fourth all on his own. So this one, Liam, I'm going to give a grade of D. That gets a D. Also, I hope you all like the artwork on these letters, but that gets a D from me, Liam. What say you?
I will probably give it a D as well. I think it's more likely if you replace Chychrun with Shane Gostisbehere is more likely to fit away for Arizona. I don't know if they even want a Warren Foegele or whatever, but I like the idea of Nick Bjugstad. 900K, I think he's at, right? And like, I don't know if you'd have to give up a first-round pick to get him. But yeah, like you said, like a 3 or a 4. I meant with Shane Gostisbehere as well. Maybe you're looking at a second and like a Puljujarvi and maybe a pick prospect somewhere. But yeah, I just don't see that one happening. And honestly, I don't think the Oilers want Chychrun. I think there's been numerous times the Oilers have been able to go out and get Chychrun along with the other 30 teams in the NHL. I think Arizona values him so high where the rest of the league just doesn't see him that way.
Yeah. The other thing with Bjugstad that you need to remember is you can sit there and look at his offensive numbers and be like, hey, he's got 21 points in 50 games. That's solid. You also have to remember he plays more than 15 minutes basically every single night in Arizona. So is he without that ice time, what kind of offensive production are you going to get from Nick Bjugstad? I don't think a ton. He's like he's a better Derek Brassard in terms of his fit. The fact he's a right shot centerman makes him an interesting fit. 6'6", he's got that size. I like him. I don't love him. If it's Bjugstad at 50% retained for a 4th-round pick at the deadline, sure, sign me up. But this big package, I just don't necessarily love it. Aaron, you got a second one for us here? Yes, you do. Brad is in. Joel Edmondson for Jesse Puljujarvi and a first. Cap retained if required. So that's a pretty big question mark in terms of the cap retained because, you know, they'd probably have to keep $500K to make the money work this year. So let's say Edmondson, $500K retained for Puljujarvi and a first. On the realistic scale, if I'm grading off, is this a move that could potentially happen? Yeah, it could. I think it's, you know, like a B+ on the realistic scale. This is probably what it would take to pry Joel Edmondson out of Montreal. Do I like this trade? No. I don't understand why you'd want to acquire a guy with term when you have Kulak, Nurse, and Broberg all on the left side next season, and young options like Niemelainen and Vinny Desharnais, who could be counted on to be your 7th defenseman, 7th and 8th D-men next year. Losing Puljujarvi, sure. Trading a first for Edmondson, I think, is an overpay. Yes, the extra year gives him more value, but that doesn't hold value for the Oilers. So I like this one more than the other one. I wouldn't pull the trigger on it myself. So Liam, I'll give this one a C-, my friend, a C- on the deal. What say you? I didn't hold that.
Why is the minus so high? Why is it all the way up there?
I don't know. My girlfriend wrote these for me. So how about you bring it up with her, Liam?
Fair enough. I don't like this trade at all. I don't think you need to go out and spend that much for Joel Edmondson. I mean, I've said this a few times, and I think we both have, like, just having cap next season just isn't a good idea for the Oilers. I think they need to be as flexible as they can be every single summer. I'd rather just pay that for a Gavrikov, to be honest. That's why I'd rather pay. If that's the trade, I'd rather just trade Edmondson for trade out Edmondson and Gavrikov.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a terrible idea. If it was Puljujarvi and a second for Gavrikov, I think I'd be in on it. This feels like an overpay. What's our next one, Aaron?
No,
all right.
No.
So, Liam sees Devon Shore, so Liam's giving this one an F. Puljujarvi, Shore, and a first for Niko Mikkola and Ivan Barbashev. Fascinating, because we haven't heard a lot of Ivan Barbashev trade suggestions thrown out there. So first, let's look at the money. Barbashev is making 2.25. Mikkola is making 1.9. So you're at 4.1. I will go ahead and say you get the Blues to retain 50% on one of those two guys, preferably Barbashev. That would get you down to right around $3 million. Boom. You can make this deal work cap-wise. Are you giving up Puljujarvi and a first for Niko Mikkola and Ivan Barbashev? So Barbashev would step in. I'm just taking a peek at his contract again. UFA at the end of the season. So you're in all likelihood letting him walk. 6'1" centerman. Okay. He can play the wing as well. I like it. Decent numbers, 9 goals, 15 assists in 51 games. And, you know, he's been playing a lot as of late. He gets a decent amount of ice time in St. Louis. Do I like giving up a first in this package? I like Mikkola. Barbashev hits like a truck. And if we're going off the realistic thing, like, could I see Ken Holland doing this deal? Absolutely. On the realistic grade, this gets close to an A for me. In terms of would I pull the trigger on this? You're filling 2 holes, but you're giving up your first rounder. If there was a second deal that was you're getting Taves for your second and something else, Taves for your second and Fogle, or a second and third and Fogle for Taves. If there was a deal for Taves that doesn't involve the first, and then you have this deal in your back pocket, you know what, Liam? I'm going to give this one a B+. I like the idea of adding Niko Mikkola. I think he could be the perfect fit on the left side of the blue line to complement Philip Broberg in an 11-7 setup. Ivan Barbashev makes their bottom 6 a lot tougher to play against. This is a guy who's racked up a good amount of playoff games in his career as well. He's played in 50 playoff games over the last 5 seasons. I think it's a decent deal. I think I might pull the trigger on it. B+ for me. What say you?
I think that's an interesting one. I'm trying to think of it from, like, the Bo Horvat trade. Like, you're essentially getting 2 NHL players from St. Louis who can play every single night. For one guy who's having a difficult season, another guy that's been up and down, and then a first-round pick, which could be 30th overall, say, somewhere late, perhaps. I don't know if St. Louis would do that trade. I feel like the Oilers would have to replace Shaw with someone a bit higher. Like, maybe if that was a ball go, I think that would be something St. Louis would like a little bit more. Like, but yeah, I'll give it a C+. I'll give it a C+.
Someone said, why would St. Louis do that? And here's why I think they might do that. They're not going into a rebuild, okay? They don't need to stockpile mid-round picks. If you trade Mikkola on his own, you're getting a mid-round pick. If you trade Barbashev on his own, you're getting a mid-round pick. Instead, they bring in a first. Either you pick a player in a very deep draft with that first, and that guy might be contributing in 2 years, or you sit there at the draft and you use that pick. Like, if they could get a first for Mikkola and Barbashev, who's to say they can't get a first for Tarasenko and a first for O'Reilly? And all of a sudden, Doug Armstrong would have 4 first-round picks in the upcoming draft that he can play with. That is probably why they would do this deal, because instead of the second and a third in separate deals, you just get the good pick. So I think this one's realistic. Puljujarvi doesn't have a ton of value on the trade market, even though as a fan base, you might like him. He doesn't. So the first might be the price you pay. It's 2 depth pieces, so giving up your best trade chip for 2 depth pieces isn't great, but this trade makes you better. I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, maybe the ball go is a little high on the Shaw replacement, but I do think you would have to replace Shaw with something a little bit better.
Maybe it's Lavoie. Maybe that's a piece.
Yeah.
All right.
Lavoie.
Next one we got here is in from BMax64. Edmonton and Chicago mock trade. To the Hawks, Yamamoto and a second. To the Oilers, Domi. I am going to give this one... Ooh, do I... Yeah. It's an overpay, Liam. I'm giving it an F. I think Yamamoto for Domi is a borderline overpay. I think a second for Domi is close to an overpay. Put them together, it's nowhere close. I don't touch this deal with a 100-foot pole. Domi doesn't have that kind of value, in my opinion. If he does, let some other contender blow their budget and trade for him. I like the piece. I'd give up a third for him. I would maybe give up the 2024 second for him, but I ain't giving up both those pieces for him, not even close. Sorry,
yeah,
BMax.
I'm probably with you. I wouldn't give up that much for Domi. Obviously, #1 fan, but I would give up. I don't know. Yamamoto's such an interesting player right now for the Oilers because we all love him. He does so much good stuff. Like, he's good at getting pucks and everything, but man, he just keeps getting hurt, and it's so difficult to like keep that guy around for the future, right? Like, I'm not saying this is the deal that you need to make it happen, but yeah, if that was like a Puljujärvi, maybe a third or a fourth for Domi, I'd be more interested. But Yamo in a second, like I don't have much interest in that one either.
Yeah, Puljujärvi in a third would be more interesting because then the money works. You're giving up a lesser asset. I would do that. Wouldn't do that. Sorry, BMax, buddy. I know you're listening. I know you're in the chat. You just sent the little crying face. I don't mean to hurt your feelings. I'm just here to give my take. Warren has our next one. Puljujärvi for Radko Gudas. The deal is 1-for-1. On the realistic scale, I will give this one a C+ because I could kind of see Ken Holland doing it, but I'm not sure why Florida would, or if Florida even could, without some money being flipped around in another deal. You got to remember, they basically can't afford to activate Anthony Duclair right now, and Gudas makes $500K less than Puljujärvi. I'm not sold on Gudas being a great solution for the Oilers on the blue line. He's a righty. He's tough. I like that he's tough. I like that he can play tough minutes. He can probably help you on the PK. I like him. I don't love him. I think they should aim higher than Gudas. But if you're sitting there and it is half an hour till the deadline, you missed on Mikkola, you missed on Gavrikov, you missed on a bunch of other pieces, and Florida calls, and maybe Florida sweetens this a little bit and says, hey, we'll even give you a little asset because we really like Puljujärvi. We want to test drive Puljujärvi. I'm going to go C+ is my final grade, Liam. I don't love it. I think you can do better on the whole, but if this was like an emergency deal because you're panicking at the last second, I wouldn't love it, but I'd understand it.
I'm probably with you on wouldn't love it, but would get it. But I think I'll give it a D, to be honest. Realist, like, call me crazy, but can Vincent Desharnais not do exactly what Radko Gudas can do?
It's a great point.
Do you need to give up a Puljujärvi to go and get the same player you already have? I don't know if you have to do that. I think there's better options.
Yeah, the only way this deal would make a little bit of sense is if we factored in some other trades. If they did or if they had like a Barbashev deal, or they got Domi and Taves, like if they added 2 forwards, and then again, 10 minutes before the deadline, you're like, listen, yes, Puljujärvi is going to be a healthy scratch for us. We don't need that extra forward. He has no value to us as a fourth-line winger, and we aren't qualifying him. We're letting him walk in the summer. Let's just get something for him. Then having Gudas as your 7th or 8th defenseman for the playoffs makes sense. But I don't think you need to be going out of your way to do that deal. In the YouTube chat, GSM, every trade involves Puljujärvi. Why would other teams want him? And this is the question. For the most part, to be fair, these trades have involved Puljujärvi and another asset. So you got to remember that. And a team with nothing to play for down the stretch might not hate the idea of having a former 4th overall pick to test drive in their lineup for a couple months. It's not the craziest thing in the world. Let's get to our next one from Gramica. He's got a couple. We'll start with the top one. Edmonton gets Taves at 75% retained. Chicago gets a 3rd and Puljujärvi. Arizona gets a 4th. Okay, this is close. I am going to give this trade a B- in terms of no, I got to go C+. C+ on the realistic scale, Liam. There's the plus. C+ on the realistic scale. Can I make 2 tweaks to it? It's a second to Chicago. It's a third to Arizona. And I'll give it one of these bad boys. If you make those 2 little changes, this deal gets an A+ in my opinion. Taves at 75% retained. Arizona, you got to eat $2.5 million. That's prorated down the back half of the season. It's not a lot of money. Enjoy another 3rd-round pick. We know you love him. Chicago, here's a second. Here's a guy you can throw into your lineup for the rest of the season that you can see what he can do with 20-plus minutes a night and a fresh start. I think this is a home run for everyone involved. Liam, what say you?
Yeah, I would honestly agree with exactly what you just said. I think this is something that is very realistic, to be honest. I could definitely see that happening. If it's not even with the Oilers, I could see it something similar to that happening with another team for Taves. It's going to cost a 3rd team to come in and pay them as well. Do you remember what Florida had to pay for Max Domi last year? Like when they took that? Was it a 4th? I think it was a 4th. So they would. My point is the value would have to be a little bit higher on that 3rd team because obviously Taves has more value than Domi. Believe it was a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, so he was traded from Columbus to Florida for a 6th and Tyler Inamoto. And then he was flipped from Florida to Carolina for Igor Korshkev. So it was actually like a 6th-rounder and some small prospects. It was nothing crazy.
Interesting. So that, I guess, if you take out the prospect, maybe... Pardon?
Maybe you can keep that a 4th for the Arizona side.
Yeah, maybe. Because I would say, yeah, that pick and the prospect probably values out a 4th rounder if you balance it a little bit. So, yeah, I like that trade. I would love to see the Oilers pull that one off and get Captain Serious here.
And the second one, because I know you're in the chat right now, and I really like both of these ideas. I think if you keep that a 4th to Arizona, you upgrade the Chicago pick to a 2nd, that gives you a 3rd. I think a 3rd in Marcus Niemelainen might be what you need to get Luke Schenn. So I'll give you a C- on the Schenn just because I don't think it's super realistic. I think he goes for more than that, honestly. Like, I get it. He's a 3rd-pairing D-man, but that cap hit is so low. They are going to have bidders. We've heard that a team like Boston likes him. We've heard a ton of teams really, really like Luke Schenn. We've heard Tampa likes him. And with that cap hit, there's going to be a bidding war. I wouldn't be surprised if they get a 2nd for Luke Schenn. I would love to see the Oilers get him for a 3rd because I think he'd be a really good fit. So the value is just, it's a little bit not quite there, but both of these are really, really, really good ideas. So the Taves deal, make a quick change. It gets me an A+. This next one comes in from Calvin. And this is an idea. This is a name we haven't talked about a lot. Jacob Silfverberg out in Anaheim. Anaheim has a lot of picks this year, but, you know, they're always looking for more. Silfverberg is $5.2 million for the next 2 seasons. He has a 12-team no-trade list he can submit. That's always something that can hurt you. 32 years old, decent veteran guy. You know, he's had years where he scores a lot. This season is not one of those years. What's he at on the year? 5 goals in 49 games. He's shooting 5.7%. You know, he should bounce back a little bit. He's had a couple of just miserable shooting percentage seasons. There's a part of me that says bad luck. There's another part of me that says guy who's lost a step, who's lost a bit of zip on his shot, just isn't quite what he used to be. I'm not touching him at all at that full cap hit. That one, it's just a non-starter. And if I'm going to get anyone from Anaheim, it's Adam Henrique. He'll cost you more. So I'll give Calvin's deal. You didn't specify money retained, so I'm going to give you a D. It's not that I hate Silfverberg. I hate his contract, and I think he's lost a step, so I'm not sure entirely how useful he'd be here in Edmonton. It's a decent name to keep in mind if you can get the Ducks to keep half of the contract, but even with that term, I'm a little bit nervous about it. So I give that one a D. What about you, Liam?
I think we're a year ahead on Silfverberg. I don't think teams are going to really want him this year. Like you said, I don't hate the idea of him. He's an experienced NHL player. He's played in Canada before, right? He was on the Sens when they went to where did they go? The Eastern Conference Final. So he's like been around the markets in Canada and kind of understands the pressure, I guess. But I think next season, Silfverberg is a name we'll see pop up more. So I'd probably put this one as like a D-2, to be honest. It's too much for a guy who isn't producing.
Next one comes in from Cord. We're going to speed it up a little bit here, I think. Klingberg at $2 million retained for JP Fogle, a third, a conditional first if Edmonton makes the Western Final, and Lavoie. I'm just going to step right up here. Sorry, Cord. Don't know if you're listening, but it's getting one of these. John Klingberg is tall Tyson Barrie. He's a right shot who specializes on the power play. They have Barrie. They have Bouchard. They do not need John Klingberg. They don't need John Klingberg at $5 million. They don't need to potentially give up a first. They don't need to lock up their first and be unable to move it in any other deadline deal. Lavoie and a third on top of that. I'm just not there at all on John Klingberg. He gets an F. I don't want the Oilers to touch him at all. No Klingberg.
Isn't this just the first trade we looked at? But it was Chychrun and the other, what's Bukestad?
Yeah, almost.
This was exactly the same, right? Or pretty similar. Yeah, I would not do this one either. I think that's giving up a lot for a player that they basically signed him to trade him, right? So you're just playing into their game a little bit. I wouldn't do it. If the value is lower, I think I might take a shot on a Klingberg. I don't think it makes you any worse. So it depends what the Oilers want. If they want to go out and score 10 goals a game, then maybe Klingberg is the guy. But if they also want to allow 9, then Klingberg is also the guy.
Just an Oilers fan. Puljujarvi, a first, and a prospect not on the NHL roster for Ryan O'Reilly. I'm in.
Sure.
Sign me up. Sign me up. This deal gets a big ol' A+ from me. I love it. I think this is really close to the Horvat deal, but a little bit less when you consider Puljujarvi maybe slightly less productive than Anthony Beauvillier has been, but still, I think they're probably pretty close. The first, sure, I'm parting ways with it if I get 3 months of Ryan O'Reilly, and as long as the prospect is like Raphael Lavoie, Marcus Niemelainen, someone along those lines, not a B+ or A-level prospect, I'm doing this deal 7 days out of 7, all day, every day. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. Liam, what do you like?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you want a Ryan O'Reilly kind of player? The money's there with Puljujarvi, first round pick, and then, yeah, whatever the prospect may be, if it is similar to what the Islanders got, maybe it is a Schaefer. I think I would probably give up a Schaefer for Ryan O'Reilly, to be honest.
The first and Schaefer seems like a lot to me for just a straight up rental. So I don't know if I would necessarily go that far. But another thing to remember is you would need the Blues to keep half of O'Reilly. He's at $7.5 million. The other thing is Ryan O'Reilly's not healthy right now. So I think it's important to remember that could hurt his trade value. So if you get him at 50% retained, it's $3.75 million. So you do Puljujarvi, you do the first, you throw in a prospect. Maybe you throw in something else and you find a way to get Mikkola in this deal at 50% retained and you put in Fogle. Like, I think the Oilers and Blues make a ton of sense. They've made a deal together already this season in the Kostin for Samurakov thing. So I love that O'Reilly deal. I like the idea of him. I'd be all in on something like that. Everything Maine says depends on the prospect, not a former first, and we're good. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at here. B- to C. Yeah, any B-, B-level prospect. Keep into that range, and you got yourself a deal with that one, or maybe you bring in a third-party broker and find a way to make that work as well. So there you go. Those are all the submitted trades. I can wrap up all of my little letter grade things here. We were all over the place. There were some good ones in there. There were some ones that I really liked. There were some that I just flat out hated, but
the Taves one was my favorite one because I think that's very realistic. Like you said, just a couple of things. I think that's a trade we'll see on before the deadline.
Alex Neal says, I really don't see how Puljujarvi gets moved. Alex, I'm going to go ahead and say I don't understand how he doesn't get moved. I just think it's a lock. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen maybe even sooner than we think. You never know. You never know. Let's wrap up the show with our Betway bets. Liam.
Hello. What
do you like?
I'm looking at the Western Conference. So yesterday, we spoke about how the Oilers were plus 700 a few weeks ago to win the division. Well, now they're plus 700 to win the Western Conference. Now, I'm assuming this is the regular season. I believe it is the regular season odds. Do you know that? I could have probably checked this before I put it up there.
This is odds to represent the West in the Cup final.
Okay, so that's the Oilers. That'll be the Oilers.
Yeah.
Plus 700 on the Edmonton Oilers to win that. I mean, what did you say yesterday? They're third in the league in regulation wins. Like, They're building it to go that far. Like, I don't think it's unrealistic for them to do that. I think they're better than Vegas. Dallas will be interesting. And then on top there, I can't even see that. Chicago, obviously. So, yeah, I think the Oilers plus 700. It's pretty good odds for a team that went to the Western Conference Finals last year.
Yeah, I think it's decent value, especially because they're starting to play well. Plus 700, don't hate it at all. Can you find better value outside of that? Because the thing you got to remember with these is the Oilers would have to win 3 playoff rounds to do it. So you're going to risk 100 to win, $700 here. If you risked 100 on them to win the first round, depending on who they're matched up against, okay, maybe you're not getting great value on that. You'd have a little bit, 150 maybe. Yeah, it's good value. I think the value's there if you wanted to take a stab at it. The Oilers to win the Stanley Cup, they are 14-1. So I think if you like them to win the West, just bet on them to win the Cup. Get that one more round in there. Go all in. But I do think there is some value on the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup. Our friends at Money Puck have them at a 21% chance of making the final and an 11.5% chance of winning the Stanley Cup. That doesn't line up with plus 700, plus 400, so I do think it's a really good value spot. The Oilers slowly starting to figure things out this season. There you go. Thank you, Liam. Shout out to our friends at Betway. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Also, if you head to Oilers Nation on Instagram or Twitter, you can find out how you can win a $25 gift card courtesy of our friends at Montana's. Montana's, with their daily deals, is bringing back the viewing party. You can find out more about that at montanas.ca. And again, OilersNation.com on Instagram, Oilers Nation on Twitter. You could potentially win a $25 gift card, so go hit them up now. Sherwood Ford as well. We got some exciting stuff coming up with them in the next month, as well as some videos of me taking a look at like their the F-150 Lightning. It's their first all-electric truck. Ooh. I got a chance to go down to the dealership and check it out, and my plan is to just email Sherwood Ford every day for the rest of the year and be like, make that the next Nation truck, make that the next Nation truck, because that's my new dream vehicle. They look unbelievable. All right. Well, Liam, that was a lot of fun.
That was good.
I know there are a lot of people saying, yeah, no show tomorrow because I'm on a plane to Miami for the NHL All-Star Game. Mm-hmm. I know there's a bunch of you who said I didn't get to your trade offers, and I'm sorry. It just took – there was a ton. Like, I'll look at my Twitter right now and see how many we had almost 50 of them, so we just don't have time for 50 of them. There were some Erik Karlsson ones that I just didn't like. There was a bunch that I'm sorry I didn't get to them. Maybe I'll work a few more into an article tomorrow when I wrap this kind of segment up. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Again, no show tomorrow. I'm back Thursday live from the beach in Florida. That is going to be a ton of fun. Get a chance to talk to Connor, Leon, and Stuart Skinner. But that is a wrap on today's show. So we will chat again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Or Thursday. Jesus.